Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Another week of home with Phuntsok and Tibetan Buddhist teachings and meditation practices. This week we are looking into free will. Does it exist? Does it not exist? How do we relate to it? Is it true that everything in the universe has already been determined, or do we actually have choice and can we influence our lives? Big questions, big questions. A lot of different philosophies and religions have different perspectives on this. So today we're really looking at the perspective from a Tibetan Buddhist lens. And I think that's all I'll say about it. Um, and I will pass it over to Kirat. But before that, just to let you all know, there's different ways of donating to Phuntsok and these to help these meditations continue. I'll put those in the chat, but they're Venmo, PayPal, and Patreon. And if I ever get my act together, I'll catch up on putting the YouTube videos of all of these up, but the majority are there. I'm back a few. And yes, basically these teachings come from Phuntsok's 20 plus years as a Tibetan Buddhist monk and some many years as now just a normal person walking in the streets of New York City. And with that, I will pass it over to Kirat and then Phuntsok will take over. So thank you everyone for joining today.
So should I just speak from your microphone or unmute this?
Can you hear her voice? Speak.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Phuntsok, for the surprising gift. Let's all get comfortable. Do you guys want to sit down? Yeah. Okay. So feel free to get comfortable and
Well, you can
adjust your
grab
body.
the cushions if you want to sit on them.
Oh, yes. Adjust your body in any way that feels necessary. And before immediately assuming a posture of stillness, check in with the body at this time to check in to see what feels most supportive. And however the body begins to respond, naturally attuning to that. And let's begin the practice with a full inhale through the nose. And a full exhalation through the mouth. Taking another deep breath in, witnessing the expansion of the belly and chest. And slowly letting go. One more time, once again, tuning to the abdomen, the chest, the nostrils, and completely letting go through the mouth. And from here, as you allow the breath to soften into its natural rhythm, taking the next few moments to slowly arrive. Knowing that you're breathing in each time you breathe in. Knowing that you're breathing out each time you breathe out. And in this way, infusing each breath with the flow of your attention. Noticing how with each passing breath, the attention arrives more deeply into the life of this moment right now. As you continue to soften into the breathing body, I invite you to turn the attention towards the heart space. And as you start to check in with the life of the heart, beginning to consider your deepest intention for being here tonight. Then you might start to sense what naturally arises within the mind. Paying attention to how the heart and body respond. And whatever this intention may be, whatever form it inhabits, whatever shape it takes, noticing what it feels like in the body, in this moment right now. And as we slowly arise from practice and relax back into the collective space, closing with another deep breath in through the nose. And slowly releasing out. Letting the mind rest within your intention as we transition into the lecture. And slowly bringing movement back into the body and lifting the gaze whenever you're ready.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Kirat. So we're now in a place where we can begin. I have to say that this topic, free will, is a topic that I'm very much afraid of. Not because I don't have a strong opinion about it, but rather because I have a strong opinion about it. And I've encountered many people who have different ideas, different opinions, and they're basically people who actually take a stand and they will move. They refuse to move from their stand. They either think the free will exists or they think free will doesn't exist. And it seems like the reasoning, the arguments given for both sides seems to be reasonable. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this especially is because is there a perspective, is there a Buddhist perspective on this topic, determinism, free will, libertarianism, what else is there? I think there's a very sort of like new philosophical idea that's sort of like in between the two. What is it called? Compatibilism or something like that? Yeah. So there's these terms. First thing we have to understand is that there is really no such term within Buddhism called free will. So the presentation, we're going to present something that seems to be pointing to something what we might consider to be the topic of free will. But there isn't really a specific thing called free will that is spoken of. There were at the time of the Buddha various philosophers or various contemplative or ascetics who proposed different ideas about what can you do, basically. There was a contemporary of the Buddha named Makali Gosala, or Makali Gosalo, I think is a more closer way of pronouncing it. And there was somebody named Nirganta. And those two sort of presented they were like the ideal representatives of those two, determinist and then free will. Okay. And there are also others who presented some sort of idea. And the reason, not to say the reason, but the Buddha took a special the Buddha was especially against one particular form of idea at the time. It was the idea of Makali Gosala. And he thought it to be the most dangerous of all philosophies that existed at the time. And the reason that he said that was because then it makes the person become inactive. I know inactive is a very sexy word within the new age, like, be inactive as if it's supposed to be that you're not supposed to do anything, just do nothing kind of thing. But it's not inactivity. It's not inactivity in the sense of non-reaction, non-reactive. Definitely, you could say the Buddha talked about non-reactivity, but definitely he didn't preach non-action. Okay. And the reason that he was vehemently against, and this was supposed to be considered one of the very few times that the Buddha actually cursed. I mean, not exactly the way we would consider cursing somebody, but I mean, if the Buddha says it, it must be a curse. It must be cursing. It almost to the point of showing anger, because the way he criticized Gosala's teaching was, listen, there is this sutra where he was sort of like speaking of, this is the singular among this, the singular among this. And he said, this is the singular amongst all false ideas. This is the singularly the worst. That fool, named Gosala, proposes this idea that everything is absolutely predetermined. And Makali Gosala gave this example of reality is like a ball of string that is just unwinding. Eventually, it will reach its end. And there's nothing you can do while it's unwinding to do anything. And basically, the most dangerous thing that he said, you don't have to be moral or immoral. You don't have to meditate or not meditate. Whether you meditate or not meditate, you have to wait until the ball of string unwinds. There's nothing you can do. And this was considered to be the most dangerous idea for the Buddha, because anyone can take that and believe it and becomes completely immoral and say, well, it doesn't matter anyway. Doesn't matter if I'm moral or immoral. I just have to wait for the end of the world and then I'll be free. It doesn't matter what I do. Eventually I'll be free, but there's nothing I can do to actually make myself free. I think this is what we could consider to be a deterministic idea, a deterministic philosophy. But his philosophy was very complex. Of course, it wasn't as simple as the way we understand determinism. And So that was his idea of determinism. He was actually a student of within the Jain system. He was the student of one of the very prominent teachers within the Jain system, and you could say he sort of understood the concept of karma, and he took it to its extreme. And when you understand what he received, you can sort of understand how he came up to this idea that everything is already predetermined, there's nothing you can do. What was somewhat ironic is that he was a leader of a group of people who were ascetics. The ascetics, the kind of people who were very harsh with their body. They didn't wear any clothes, they walk around naked. Not all, there are some Jains who walk around naked, but this was a particular group that was kicked out of the Jains because of their extreme view. And they didn't eat that much. So when people who were following that came to ask the Buddha direct questions about this philosophy, one of the things that the Buddha pointed out is, so why are you doing all this hard work for? If it doesn't matter what you do, so why are you walking around naked? Why are you depriving yourself of food? Why are you eating only a little bit of food a day? I mean, what are you trying to do? If it doesn't matter. So you are, in a way, contradicting your own philosophy. You are doing those things because somewhere in the back of your mind, you think your philosophy is, well, the Buddha said it's like a fish trap. And when you hear fish trap, of course, you think, oh my God, Buddha's calling him a fish trap. No, Buddha wasn't calling him a fish trap. He called him a man trap. He said, just like a fish traps fish, and then they suffer while they're in the net, and then they go to all these kinds of suffering. The philosophy that Gosala was presenting, it would trap people in suffering. Because you would basically say, well, there's nothing I can do, and become discouraged. And that is the main reason why the Buddha was against absolute determinism. Now, then the other side of it comes in, and that's how the Jains, well, not the Jains, but because the Jains had many different sects within them. Okay, not the Jains that we know now, but there was a sect of Jain that exists at the time who was saying that, and listen to this, because this is going to be very important, because a lot of us who call ourselves people who understand karma have somewhat of a similar idea about karma. So what he said was, whatever pleasure or pain you experience, I'm going to say it again, whatever pleasure or pain that you experience, it comes from your past action. That sounds correct, right? It sounds correct, right? But the Buddha was against that also. Because that would mean that now you understand why a student who heard that came up with the idea of, well, there's nothing, there's no such thing as good and bad behavior. It doesn't matter what you do because it's all predetermined anyway. You can understand how that person did that, but within that system of it's predetermined by past actions. So how do you prevent suffering in the future? Basically, you do absolutely nothing. And when they say absolutely nothing, they mean absolutely nothing. You try not to create new karma, basically. And what is considered to be a saint in that tradition is that somebody goes in a cave and starve themselves to death. They don't interact with anybody, so they don't create any new karma. And the Buddha sort of made fun of that. Was he making fun? I'm not sure, but it sounded like he was making fun of it. He said, okay, since your saints reach sainthood by basically killing themselves, by committing, starving themselves to death, how do you know if they achieved it or not? Do they come back to you after they've starved themselves to death and say, oh, I achieved it? So you have no way of actually knowing whether if you starve yourself to death, that you will have achieved it. There was actually even more drastic way of doing that. So you would go to a cave, almost starve yourself almost to death. And at the moment when you sort of believe you're going to die anyway, you would have somebody arrange a tishula, a trident, at the end of a cliff. And you have to position yourself correctly so that when you dive, you hit it. So they would be over there about starving, about to die from starvation. And as their final act, they would jump head first and make sure that the middle prong of the trident hits them right here in the middle, in the center of the head. And when a person dies that way, they consider that person having achieved liberation, freedom from samsara, freedom from all kinds of pain and suffering. And of course, the Buddha would ask, okay, since that is how you reach that ultimate aim, you can't really verify it because you're gone, you're not around anymore. So the Buddha was really pointing to, so this points to, is it possible for you to take actions where you can start to see the fruits of your actions right here, what's called in the here and now? Is it possible for you to actually behave a certain way and not have to wait until you die for you to actually begin to see that something is working? Yeah. So you could say the Buddha didn't deny that we can actually choose what the actions that we can do. But the way he said it, he just said we didn't have absolute freedom neither. And there's a beautiful sort of analogy where the Buddha says, gives the analogy of a farmer who plants a seed and then puts the fertilizer there, and everything is working nicely. And the Buddha asked, does the farmer, because he planted the seed, he makes sure he has all the fertilizers there, he waters it and makes sure it's well drained, does he go home and say, well, I hope I'm going to see that tomorrow. I hope I'm going to have crops tomorrow, because that's when he wants to have crops. No, the Buddha says he just waits, but he knows that everything that was done, and all you have to do is now just wait for the proper time for the things to happen. Okay. And so taking that into consideration, so we don't have absolute freedom to do whatever we want with reality that is at that moment, but we do have a certain freedom to choose how to react. So the way you could say the Buddha presents, maybe I'm even afraid of using the word free will, because that term is so charged, because people already they're set on their different camps and they're ready with their weapons, ready to throw it at each other. Okay, but just for the sake of using a term that we all understand, and I'm gonna say it from the very beginning, I am not using it in the way that it is in an absolute way of understanding it. Okay. When it came to the idea that everything, whatever you experience, comes from your past, and the Buddha refuting that, he said, take the example of someone who is sick, and they go to a doctor, and the doctor is well trained. Don't they eventually become well from something that was done in that life? Not necessarily something that this is not the result of something that was just coming from a past life. So when they say coming from the past, they're meant from a past life. Like this life there's nothing you can do. All you can do is just stop acting, and eventually you will burn out your karma, and then you will reach liberation. Okay. So the Buddha countered that by saying, what you have conditions. You have conditions, yes. You cannot just decide to do whatever you want. What you want is sort of like conditioned by what you have to make your decisions with. If you're in this room, you cannot make a decision that is outside of what this room is capable of providing you to make the decisions with. But whether you decide to go to that side or go to that side is not something that is necessarily predetermined that you are going to go over there, and you had no choice but to go on that side. You can, in this very moment, in the very present moment, you can make choices. You can decide based on what is presented to you. And there's another example I have to bring up, and I think it will explain. It might even be a bit controversial. Okay, it's not from me. It's the Buddha who actually said it. So blame the Buddha. Okay. He said, he gave an example. He said, there are people who do a trifling bad deed, and they end up in hell. And there are some people who do the very same trifle bad deed, and they don't go to hell. Instead, maybe they get a headache in that life, or something happens that they're not even aware of. Now that sounds like the Buddha wouldn't be saying something like that. Somebody does a trifle thing and goes to hell, and somebody does the same trifle thing and nothing happens to them. And this is the reason why I also am another pet peeve of mine. And people talk about how suffering is a gift. Stop it. Stop it right there. Okay. Suffering can be a gift. Suffering by nature is not by nature a gift. Okay? So what makes suffering able to be a gift? In the same way, what makes a trifling bad deed able to make someone experience hell, or what makes the same trifling bad deed able to make someone not experience hell? It depends on the person. Someone can break a nail and then they become completely dysfunctional. Does breaking a nail does the very action of breaking a nail means that whoever breaks a nail, they become dysfunctional? It is suffering for that person, however, whoever that person may be. But the thing is, it depends on the person. Okay. So what is it that what history is the person bringing into the situation? That will determine how they will react. It will determine what kind of choices that they will make. So someone who is not spiritually powerful or doesn't have any spiritual prowess, you could say, or you could say it doesn't have a good measure of good deed within them. The smallest infraction could take them to a very could make them suffer. While somebody who has a lot of spiritual prowess, they can do the same. Okay, this is not licensed to go try to see what you can get away with. Okay, don't do this at home. Okay, don't do some bad deed thinking, let me see if it's going to take me to hell or not. We don't know. The thing is, you don't know. And that is one of the things that the Buddha also kept criticizing people who say, oh, this is that. The Buddha will ask him, do you know this from your own experience, that what you're saying is that's what it is? Someone who says, everything has come from the past. And the Buddha would say, oh, so you know everything about that happens in the past, and the things that's happening in the present, you know whether or not it is actually coming from something that came from the past? Is this something that you have direct knowledge about? Okay. So if you don't have direct knowledge about something, don't make any absolute statements. Okay. But you can use your experience to help guide you to come up with guidance, how to act in the present moment. Okay? Use your experience. You have an intention, and that's why intention is so important. That's why intention is considered to be the most important part of taking an action. So two people can take the same action, because their intentions are different, they will have completely different results. And this is not something that we necessarily have to break our heads to have an understanding of. We have this in common law. Two people who do the same act, the law recognizes intention as important. That's how you have, what are the different things? Like mandatory, was that? No. Manslaughter. Manslaughter. I'm not a lawyer, okay?
Like the different types of like killing, involuntary manslaughter.
Involuntary manslaughter, there it is. Involuntary manslaughter is different. The punishment for that will be different from somebody who actually planned it and actually ended up with the same result. Basically, the person is dead. The law recognizes that there's a difference, and it gives different results. This is recognized. You could say this is the innate wisdom acting up. This is the innate wisdom that we are somewhat tapped into. So to mention that someone does an action and someone else does the same action and they have different results, you can understand, oh yeah, we experience this in life. And the Buddha even give another example, which is even with classes. The Buddha gave the example, okay, you have a guy who steals $1 and goes to jail. You have another guy who steals $1 and that person doesn't go to jail. And the Buddha said, because the guy who steals $1 is wealthy. And the guy who steals $1 is poor. Basically, the guy who steals $1 cannot replace it. So he goes to jail. And the guy who steals $1 who is wealthy can replace it. So think of that instead of wealthy in terms of material wealth, think of spiritual wealth. Okay? If you have a lot of spiritual wealth, you can get away with certain things. Again, I'm not telling you to go try it out, okay? So you cannot judge just by what you see the person is doing as to what the result is going to be. Okay. Now, so going to free will, how should we understand this concept of free will? It is basically we witness ourselves making decisions. Should I do this? Should I do that? Okay. The deterministic person says, it doesn't matter me pondering whether I do this or whether I do that. It's already predetermined what I'm going to be doing. And the question I would ask, okay, what predetermined the person asking the question in the first place? So if it is predetermined, no matter what I end up doing is what was already predetermined. So me asking the question, should I do this? Should I do that? That me question is also predetermined. And that sounds like a very stupid part of this function. If it's already predetermined, why be predetermined questioning predetermination? Okay. And the same person who's making that statement, who's making that argument, it's already predetermined. My question would be, why are you even telling me? It's already predetermined. Why are you even, what are you trying to gain by telling me it's already predetermined? Doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter if I'm nice, it doesn't matter if I'm awful, it's already predetermined if I'm going to be in pain or if I'm going to be in bliss. So why tell, or is it predetermined for you to come and tell me it's predetermined? Because I'm telling you it's not predetermined? What a stupid thing. What a stupid thing to be in this universe of predetermination. Okay? Because this is what we experience. That's the universe, that's the reality we experience. We witness ourselves making, before we act, pondering, what should I do? Now, when you and I are standing in front of a decision to be made. We have choices to make. And I make this decision and you make that decision. What determines it for you to make that decision? Your internal environment. So these are the things that you have that helps you to determine that. And a very simple thing, if you have more knowledge about something, that will condition the decision that you're going to make, the choice you're going to make. If I have less knowledge, that will also condition the choice I'm going to make. Yes, the choices we make are conditioned within that framework of conditioning. It's not conditioned in the sense of being predetermined. Doesn't matter. I think there was this study a long time ago by psychologists. This is the time that I have to disagree with the well, it's not the one time, but the many times. But this is definitely one of those times that I have to disagree with the realm of psychology, where they supposedly have this what would you call that, experiment. And in this experiment, they proved there's no such thing as free will, because they scanned the brain of the person before the person speaks something. There was a movement somewhere in the brain, and somehow that proves there's no free will. And I have to be like the Buddha. I say, all you're seeing is seeing electrical impulses in this place, and you're seeing the person's mouth moving. Where are you making it? Why? How is this enough for you to draw the conclusion, therefore there's no free will? You're basically observing, oh, brain activity there. Oh, the person now speaks. How is that enough for you to say, oh, that proves it, there's no free will? Okay. So there is no absolute liberty to do whatever you want, in a sense of somehow completely extract yourself from time and space. Well, you sort of can do that, but we're not talking about that. If you have the spiritual wealth, you can extract yourself from time and space. But most of us, we operate within time and space, okay? For most of us who don't have that spiritual prowess to be able to extract ourselves from time and space, so we have to live within time and space. So we cannot extract ourselves from time and space, make a decision, and then go back in. Okay? That is, make a decision without having conditions to make that decision. And the reason why the Buddha wants to emphasize, yes, there are potentials from past actions, but they're not fixed. We can, in a very present moment, just like if you plant a seed, a farmer plants a seed, depending on how the farmer takes care of the seed will determine how the seed will grow into a plant, how it will give crops, how determines how to give crops. So this is something that we actually witness, and this is sort of pointing to the interdependence of things. Some things behave a certain way in the realm of reality, is governed by the same laws where everything else in that reality is experienced, is witnessed. And the reason I have to say that is going to free will. The reason the people who say there is no free will is because they're looking for an absolute free will. There is no such thing anywhere. There is no absolute anything anywhere. There's no absolute free will, and there's no absolute person who's telling me there's no free will. So in the realm of absolute, that person doesn't even exist to tell me there's no free will. Okay? But going back to witnessing ourselves making choice, it seems like that's we are exercising free will. So I would have to say just like everything else that we experience, everything that is part of our reality, just like everything else that is part of our reality, the interconnectedness, we all share this fundamental reality. That's why we are able to relate with each other. That's what is our relating with each other is the very fundamental basis of this reality. So whatever we experience is of the same nature. That means this hand is not absolute, it is conditioned, and it is something that we can say exists, even if I go like this. It is something that we say exists because we relate with it. So in the same way, we relate with something going on in our minds that we call free will. In the same fundamental principle that governs the existence of my hand is the same fundamental principle that governs I'm making a choice. If you want to say there is no free will, you're looking for an absolute free will, and you're correct. But if you're looking for a relative free will, just like this hand is relative, that is, it relates, it exists in relationship. Then if you look for a free will that's like that, then it is something that exists also. So that means, just like the reason I gave the example of one person does some sort of evil action and goes to hell, another person does the same evil action and doesn't go to hell. So you can say, and we experience this. Sometimes this will seems to be stronger at one time than it is at another time. And why is it that we experience it sometimes strong, sometimes weak? That is itself pointing to the relative nature of it. Our will is dependent. I have a very good friend of mine who used to drink every single day, used to smoke a pack a day. And one day he decided, okay, I'm not drinking anymore, I'm not smoking anymore, and he stopped. And he hasn't touched anything since. That is something that we are actually witnessing. We're not making it up. It's not something that exists in some abstract. There's maybe a person who maybe be drinking every day, who maybe one day say, I'm stopping, and maybe stops. This is something that we experience. And it's something that we also experience in our own lives. There are certain things, it seems to be very easy to say, okay, I'm not doing this, and we stop. And there are certain things that it seems very difficult for us to say that. So what does that mean? It means that what we consider the capacity to make a choice is very conditional. We can strengthen it, and we can also weaken it, because it's something that exists. Like everything that exists, they are conditional. Okay. So there was a time in my life, when I was much younger, I felt I had a much stronger will. Like, I'm going to wake up at 4:30, and I woke up at 4:30, and I wasn't fighting it. Now, well, maybe 5 more minutes. Okay, well, I wake up at 5. Why is it that I find myself not able to do that? It's the condition of being able to make that choice was much stronger. Or we say, no, let me put it this way. I had conditioned the capacity to make choice in such a way back then it was much stronger, and now it's not as strong. And how do you exercise that capacity to make it strong? You begin by making tiny choices, and you need to witness yourself fulfilling it. In this way, you're strengthening that. Don't try to make a choice that is difficult, that you know is difficult, and only to witness yourself not able to follow through. witnessing yourself not able to follow through weakens your capacity. Okay? So do something very simple. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to make any sense. I'm going to move that lighter from the left to my right, and you do it. This very simple act, you didn't see the lighter, so it doesn't matter. This very simple act will strengthen, will condition my capacity to be able to see myself, make a choice, and follow through. And it is because of this weakening that we witness of not being able to follow through our choices. That is the reason why a lot of people say, well, that's because there's no such thing as free will. Because I have an example. Okay, you may give me examples where it seems to work, but it just seemed to work. But the actual time when it actually worked, when it was true, when it was when it didn't work. Does that make sense? In all those other examples, when it seemed to work, that was just an illusion. That wasn't real. But the time when it didn't work, that's the reality. That doesn't make sense, right? So it is not so much. I mean, some people might say, "Oh, the Buddha has just been washy-washy." No, not washy-washy. Wishy-washy. Doesn't want to take a stand. The Buddha is afraid. He wants everybody. He just being politically correct. Well, saying among the bad ideas in the world, the singularly worst idea is the one by that fool, that hollow of a man named Gosala. Tell me if he was being politically correct. And some people might say, oh, the Buddha lost his temper. If he was a fool and he was saying, you call him a fool, the Buddha was just speaking the truth. Right? You can call, if a definition fits for the object and you say that's the object, then it's just, you're not being harsh, you're just saying that's what it is. You're being foolish. And the Buddha defined foolish somebody who engages in conduct that harms others and continues to do it, even though the person continues to see that it's harming others. So that's considered a fool because the person doesn't understand how to put it in a new agey way. The person doesn't understand how those things will come back to them. Okay, that's a very simple way, but new agey, never mind. Some of you don't like that, but it's a way of explaining that. Right. I had so many examples of sutras where the Buddha was sort of presenting his case, but I think I've mentioned enough because I kept saying, oh, and the Buddha said, oh, in that story, I think I've done enough of that. But the main thing is, to say that it is all predetermined is being irresponsible. To say that you have absolute freedom to do whatever you want is being overly egotistic. You have to find a middle ground. These are the things that I have. It's up to me to decide what to do. This decision is conditioned, just like everything else is conditioned. Okay. And sometimes this brings up something else, which I'm not going to bring up because it's another pet peeve of mine, probably another class. And believe it or not, it's time for questions. Yes.
So, what would the Buddha say about a psychic?
A psychic?
Like if you get a reading and there is conviction of a particular potential coming to fruition, how is that happening? Is like, what's the relationship, I guess I'm asking, between free will and fate? Like something meant to be, something's destined. Is that real, or do we make it happen as it does?
It's kind of both. I'm not being wishy-washy. Okay. Just like the seed in the ground, leave it alone. It is definitely going to sprout into some crop, right? But if you do something to it, it will not give you the crop. So you can say the psychic is able to see all the potentials for an outcome are present. If you don't do anything toward that potential, that will be your outcome. And it seems like from your present condition, you are not doing anything to them. So the psychic can say definitely, yeah, that will be the case. I'm going to say something that's going to seem to make the Buddha contradict himself. There are instances where the Buddha, is like a psychic and says this will happen, and that is basically somewhat supporting certain premises of the deterministic point of view, that there are certain things that the conditions for them are so strong that they will definitely bring about their result. Like there's a story of this arhat at the time of the Buddha who could not eat. Even though he was an arhat, he was a liberated spiritual person, but he could not eat because the condition for him not to eat were too strong. You just had to live it out. Okay, so there are things that you could. It's like how does it go again? That prayer. It's a Christian prayer. Sorry, it's a Christian prayer. Teach me to be wise, to avoid things. Stop trying to change things that I cannot change, and to accept things that something like that.
Trying to accept things I cannot change and encourage to accept the things I can.
Yeah. See, in that they say there are things that I can change. So, and also there are things that I cannot change. That's reality. The thing is, that is our experience. That's what we experience. Every day, there are certain things that sometimes you see yourself heading toward a direction and you want to stop yourself, but for some reason you don't seem to have the means to stop yourself. So you can say that in a sense is fixed, but it's not the entire universe is completely fixed. Because if the entire universe is completely fixed, then come on, let's drink mezcal until my head explodes, I pass out, and then give me another bottle. Because eventually, what's the point? Eventually, I'm just going to be liberated no matter what I do. I don't have to do anything to affect whether I'm liberated or not.
But aren't there some things that are that way?
Yes, yeah, there are certain things that are that way.
Like there are some people that will always come back into your life, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, because the conditions for that experience is so strong. It's almost as if in order for you to change that, let's look at it in terms of energy. The amount of energy that is present to make that happen is such, in order for you to counter it, you will need even more energy to counter it. And sometimes we just don't have the means to gather the amount of energy to make that, to cause that to happen. Okay. So that's in a way sort of like supporting both. We have the freedom to try and get the energy to offset it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we will do it, but we have the freedom to try to get the energy. And if we do get the energy, then we can change its direction. And at the same time, there's this amount of energy that is present, that is going in a certain direction, and is going to keep going that direction. So in that sense, it is fixed. So you could say freedom is relative, and fixed situations, that's also relative. All these things, the very, very reality itself is a relative experience, relativity experience. Okay. Whatever we perceive even though it seems to go against that, like that guy keeps coming back, that person keeps coming back, no matter what you do. Okay, that's a relative fixed. And you go to your psychic, and your psychic tells you that, oh, it's in the card. It's definitely going to happen Tuesday, right? And and you do something, and it doesn't happen Tuesday. Okay. Okay. I'm thinking, should I say it? Okay. Don't get scared. No, I'm not gonna tell you.
Do it.
I can say Kathy's safe. Why is Kathy safe?
I'm sitting on this side.
Because she didn't sit over there. No, no, not that. Because Kath, okay, here it is. A friend of mine wants me to move to Houston. And my friend told me, and the reason sent me something that would convince me to move to Houston. He said, there is this, do you know such and such Lama? Oh yeah, he's a great Lama. He said, well, this is what he said about, you better be out of New York by that time.
Oh, okay.
No, what do you say?
Yeah, because I don't want to make it, I mean, it's,
I think you can say it.
I can say,
It's
okay, okay, it's just us. Okay, you're not gonna freak out, right?
Yeah, we don't mess. No,
You're not gonna. You had mezcal, okay? You had mezcal. Okay, all right. So according to this great Lama, who's psychic, he said,
But that's home, though.
yeah. Oh, yeah, but very good. Okay, he said
Is it?
it's in the cards. 2030, New York is gonna be
Gone?
yeah.
Flooded?
No,
Bombed.
attacked, bombed.
Attacked by
Oh,
Because of what's happening globally now.
yeah.
Like, it's gonna come back to America.
But what?
It's gonna come back to the US like it always does.
So, like, according to them, 2030, it's in the card. It's gonna happen. And that person is sort of like advising the students to move out. Now, that's in the card. That's fixed. So, what energy is necessary to be able to avert this? He said you have to start now to collect this energy if you want to avert this. And he gives a list of things to do that will gather the energy that will make it not happen.
But does he say it's possible that it won't happen?
It's possible it will not happen if we gather the necessary energy to push it. Oh, we have to do a lot of virtuous things.
Is it the manpower though? Like people.
Yeah, it's not just one person who has to do it. It has to be a group, a collective.
Yeah. It's Pluto and Aquarius.
Yeah.
It totally is.
Yeah.
It's what?
Pluto and Aquarius. Like it's power to the people. It's finally that time.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, in America,
It
Saturn.
literally predicts it. It's like governments are going to be completely overthrown.
Okay.
There we go.
Are you scared?
Phuntsok, we're gonna go back and delete this from the video.
Yes. Because this is the question part, right?
They
We're in
alarm
the question
many
part.
people.
We got trashed.
Yeah.
And
This really happened. Someone.
Look, I have a follow-up on
a question? Yes.
Yeah. It's not
Did I
about
answer your question?
You answered it.
Okay.
it's,
Go ahead.
it's not, yeah, it's not about New York ending, it's about so it's okay, like let's say there is this hypothetical scenario of some situation, I want, for the lack of a better word, destined to happen. And
Yeah.
let's say a given person doesn't have the energy.
Mhm.
But I do think that when I first came in, and we started chatting about it, and I think one of the best things you mentioned, which resonates with me, is the will to react is yours. And
Yes.
that's different from the will to act and change the situation. I think those are two different things, right? So what I would say, what I was going to ask is that when there is this crazy, there's not even use the word crazy, say some predestined extreme event or like a important event is going to happen. So the would it can we consider the ability to react to that situation in itself free will? Right? Meaning like I choose to react in a certain manner. Now you would say that comes from the past karma and all that kind of stuff, sure. But that in itself is, let's say if that is the energy that you can have, a small energy, tiny amount that you have in you to react, how do you cultivate that? By meditation and mindfulness and all this? Or is it just like that's also there's nothing much you can do, it's just given to you? You get my question?
That,
The
yeah.
energy to
So
react is different from the energy to change the outcome.
yeah, definitely. So that is something and that's what the training is about. The training is about that. The training is about developing how we react. And the way we react will determine on what we have to help us react. Just like I was able to wake up at 4:30 just by like that, and now I keep snoozing about 20 times. So, it's what is it that's in me now that makes me incapable of, or what is lacking within me now that makes me incapable of just getting up at 4:30 that was present within me that made me able to say, okay, I'm waking up at 4:30 and I wake up at 4:30. So there's something that can be developed. Yes, it can be developed, especially with meditation. Remember that thing I said? Okay, yes, you can extract yourself from space and time. That's how you can do it. You can extract yourself from space and time through deep meditation. And also something that to your question, something else I wanted to say. It ties in with what you're referring to, what you're asking. So I'm not trying to capture attention. I'm having a Trump Biden moment.
Is it? Yes. This is my question. Yeah. Probably.
Can you say what you mention? What the question that you asked, the context that you mentioned?
Just the psychic.
Yeah, the psychic. Oh yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
That triggered it. And this is also another example, right? And it connects to what you're talking about. So when you develop meditation to a certain extent, as you're meditating, you do make contact with what you might call your will, right? And then you could say the contact is stronger, and you're able to exercise it more, right? And there's a point you reach where you could say, in the very center of will. And when you're in the center of will, and this also somehow connects what we were talking about last time, desire. Okay, how we described desire last time. So you're in the very center of your will, and at that moment you're somewhat out of space and time, and you can decide, make a decision. I desire or I will to know what's going to happen tomorrow. And then you can see what's going to happen tomorrow. And so it depends. So that's the cultivation. When you're meditating, you're cultivating your will. And then you will eventually reach a level of in your meditation where you will immediately witness your will in action. Okay? And that's how psychic, what you say, somebody who's consciously psychic. Okay, there are people who are unconsciously psychic, that they are born that way and they have no idea where it came from, right? But somebody who's consciously psychic, interested in the meditation, interested in the very center of their will, and basically just will things into existence. Okay. I will to know such and such. and they will know such and such. I will to know my past lives, and they come to know my past life. I will to know if they have a past life, if that's true or not. Okay. So that's sort of connects to your question and curates.
Yep.
Because it is a relative phenomena, it can be developed or undeveloped.
So,
Someone has a question.
So,
What a question in the room? Yes.
question in the room is the will to develop it, does it come from the state of mind in meditation where you really connect with your purest form of mind?
Yeah, something, yeah.
Or where does it come from?
Where does that will come from?
Yes.
To get there?
Yes.
What little will you have now?
What?
So right now, my will is not strong enough, it's not developed enough for me to just go in there. So I have to over time witness myself develop deliberately, and that's why the Buddha was very much against Gosala's idea, was that you can take action to bring about the changes that you want.
So it's intentional.
Intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's an intentional will that you touch in your own mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can begin to touch it from the very first time you start to meditate. You start to witness something within you willing things. And it's at first it will be very vague. It's like you somewhat touch it, but you can't really tell what you've touched, but it seems to be that. And you're able to exercise some measure of it. But because of conditioned doubt,
Yeah.
that is very strong within us, that is active because it's a relative thing, it's existing, then it prevents us from exercising that into its fullest at first.
So is it a practice of letting go of that doubt?
Yeah.
Let go of the doubt.
Yeah. And letting go of the doubt is, and just like everything else, it takes practice. Mm-hmm. And saying it takes practice is actually is you honoring reality. Mm-hmm. You can't just push reality aside and have your own reality. I'm not talking about having your own perspective. I'm talking about having a reality that is completely just your reality. And then using your own totally unique reality to come and interact with everybody else's reality.
Is that the same? Do you mean like your own narrative?
No, I'm not even talking about your own narrative. I'm talking about completely imagined, like cosmic.
Like delusional.
Yeah, basically you're delusional at that point. Yeah. The fact that my will is weak, I have to acknowledge it. I have to honor that that's reality. Yeah, if I don't honor it, if I don't accept it as the conditions that created this all came in here in respect for me to have an experience of weak will. And if I don't want a strong will, I have to appease. No, not appease. I have to what's that? Appease?
I think appease.
Appease? Okay. No, for some reason it doesn't make sense when I'm saying it in my mind. I have to appeal. Yes. Wrong last letter. I have to appeal to the very nature of reality to make witness myself having a strong will. The very nature of reality that makes me have a weak will is the same nature of reality that I have to appeal to have a strong will. So how can I, bash it when it seems to be presenting something that I, at the moment, don't want? And at the same time, praising it when I want. It's like, trying to bribe it. Can't stand you, but I'm going to bribe you to get what I want. Right? The very person or the very thing that you say has the power to give me the experiences that I'm having, you curse it because you're having an experience that you don't want, and then you praise it and you try to bribe it to get to an experience that you want. Right? That is really delusional. And I'm looking for another word that's stronger than delusional.
Psychotic.
Psychotic. Okay.
Dysfunctional.
Dysfunctional.
Phuntsok, we have a question
Yes.
from
Yes, please.
Musonda as well.
Where's Musonda? Oh, there he is.
I'm here. Hey, Lama Phuntsok.
Hello.
Okay, so if the Buddhist conceptual framework is like the road network between New York and out of New York, let's say maybe you're going to LA, and you know that this event is going to happen, do you really have a choice if your survival is dependent on you following the directions that will take you to LA? Let's say you're driving and you need to take a left. Is the choice happening, or in this case, is the choice really there? And at this point, does choice become a burden if you're going to the wrong, like if you confuse the directions, for example?
Yeah. So the answer is in the question. Is the choice really there? There is no really choice. The choice is always conditional. If you decided, or if you, let's say, for example, you decide to go to LA, I'm trying to understand, is it like, so you make a wrong turn, you turn left instead of right, and you end up back in New York?
I'm actually thinking more in terms of if the route to safety is LA, then it's almost like you don't have a choice. And like you're lifted of the burden of choice by the road network that's available to you. Maybe that could represent your options.
If you don't know how to swim and you decide to go into the ocean, the condition, don't know how to swim, meeting ocean equals drowning. It doesn't equal swimming. If you know how to swim, you go into the ocean, the result is you know how to swim. Both made a choice, I'm going to the ocean. The result is conditional based on what you bring into it. I'll use that word, narrative.
Oh, I was just thinking this also, what he said triggered what I was thinking about before, which is like the burden of choice. And I'm going to ask this, I'm going to make a statement first and ask a question, which is, what really like calms me down, what I feel like has like helps me be more in the moment, is that I could think of this concept of like the universe like speaks through me, like whatever I feel, I'm meant to feel it, and I'm supposed to follow my feelings. And I wonder if like there's anything like Buddhist like teachings that are kind of like relates to that. But, like our choices are kind of made for us, but we just sort of choose to listen to ourselves to like then follow what is meant for us.
So this is like a somewhat deterministic idea. Like,
somewhat, but like sometimes like I don't know, sometimes like I fight my feelings sometimes. Like I don't want to feel it, and then therefore like I don't follow what I meant to feel, essentially.
That by feeling me like a hunch or something.
Yeah, or like if it's like an instinct, or if it's like a desire. Like if I like let's say I desire, like it's a will. Like I desire to like wake up at 6 in the morning and go to the gym. But like I'm not doing it, and then I feel bad for not for not doing it. So I guess in that way, like I guess it's a little bit deterministic, but still at the same time, like I'm trying to develop that choice to sort of follow those feelings.
Yeah. So when you started to mention that immediately brought me to I guess what may be termed like the mystical part of Buddhism, and I'm cringe from saying that word, mystical part of Buddhism. But eventually, what you want to get to a place similar to what you're referring to. When you align yourself with the nature of reality, then you don't need to deliberately make choices.
Right. Flow.
Okay.
What is it?
Like flow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Flow.
Yes.
But you have to bring yourself to that. It will not just happen by itself. So you have to make a conscious decision to be able to no longer have to make decisions.
Yeah.
Where you just flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're in, I would say, even not necessarily perfect, but you're in an alignment with reality as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I want to get us to. But I think to your point, until I think there's like other conditions that we have, which is like what society expects of us. Like we want to meet these like other like worldly conditions that then like clashes with our own, I guess, like desires.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So how do we like I guess decondition from that?
Okay, that brings a very important point. Many of what we have, or many of what we think is many of the things that we think are our own desires are not really our own desires.
Yes.
So we have to do a washing first. Is this my desire or is it not my desire? And then really look at it to see if it is really something that is really coming from you or something that you just, trying to appease. Not people with appease can work. Right? And eventually you can get to arrive at your own place where what you are witnessing, what you're experiencing are your own desires.
How do you do a washing?
And just be present with whatever desire comes up. Yeah, be present with it. Don't judge it. Don't rush to act from it, but just take your time. Okay. And we will notice that I would say for most people in this modern time, what we call our desires are not really our desires. Yeah. It's in some way a desire that it was planted within us, inherited. We think it's ours because we think that's what it's supposed to be doing. Yeah. And Musonda, the last thing I want to say about what the point that you brought up is, yes, it seems like LA, for example, is the route, but to choose to go there is up to you. There are always conditions available. Remember, acting and reacting. It's up to you to decide how to react. There's food here. I'll decide to eat or not eat, but I will eat. And it's because I decide. All right.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
But wouldn't you say that the psychological means that some people have to even know that there are conditions that lead to freedom is also a predetermined choice? Like there are some people who don't even recognize that they could be free, or that there's another way of living, or that there is a safe route they could pick. And isn't that then predetermined by their past actions that freedom would even be a choice for them in that moment?
Yeah. So I would be careful. Instead of saying a predetermined choice, I would say pre-existing conditions. Mm-hmm. Remember, choice itself is not absolute. Mm-hmm. You cannot decide to give something that you don't have. You can make the decision, I'm going to give this building to my niece. It's not mine to give. I can make the decision, I can say it. But it's not the condition. I don't have that condition to actually give this building to my niece. Okay.
The condition is like, what is reality?
What is reality? We have to be in alignment with it. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if it's, and only when we are real with our reality can we actually begin to develop the will to escape it? Okay. All right. I think, I don't know, any more questions over there? Okay.
No question, Punsak. I thought Buddha was Koshla's student for some reason. He looks like he hated him, so that's good to know. Anyways, thank you very much for your wisdom as always.
Thank you. And
Hi, I just wanted to say something, but I don't know how to say it, so I haven't been able to ask.
mhm.
Whenever this topic comes up, I just find myself very agitated, and I just wonder, like, if there's anything you can share with how maybe, I don't know, I'm hearing Buddha's agitation with Kosala. Maybe there's something about this topic that feels a bit like a circular logic or something, that it doesn't feel like a use of one's energy, like to think about, like to me, if you're always deterministic, then you need control over your reality. And if you're only into free will, you're not always thinking about predetermined conditions and actions. And just to be in a duality of conversation with those two, it's just a very agitating state for me. I don't know. So I just want to know, like, if there's any insight you have on
I would
positive.
say congratulations. That's a very healthy reaction.
Okay.
Okay?
Like
There's
I'm
nothing wrong
dying.
with that reaction. That's a very healthy reaction. The thing is, our reality, our experiences are themselves our teachers. Let
Right.
them teach us. We cannot force reality. I want you to be deterministic. Should be
Yeah.
deterministic. I want you
Yeah.
to be complete. What's the other one? Complete liberalism. Be completely liberalism. That's what I want. No, just meet reality as it is, and life will be much better.
Okay.
And your discomfort is because your wisdom is, is shaken and disturbed by these presentations of those two extremes.
Yes, that's how it's feeling. It's like if there's an act of violence or something, I'm just giving an example off the top of my head, you're not welcoming that act of violence. Maybe you acted in some ways to meet this act of violence, but it's still an external thing that's happening to you. Was that written in the stars? I mean, I guess I just have to say, like, I grew up in a Muslim background and faith, so there's this idea of everything being written, and I really resisted that my whole life, so I'm kind of like, when I hear predetermined or deterministic, I hear this sort of,
Yeah. So remember condition. Go back to conditionality. Conditionality. If I let go of this, what's going to happen?
it's gonna fall.
Why?
Gravity.
Because
And
all the conditions
and you
for
let
it
go.
to have that result are present.
Yes.
Right? So I let it go, and the conditions just fulfill themselves. But if I had a psychic powers,
Or in space.
and I could make it suspend in space, so that would be another condition. I'm not gonna make that demonstration. Okay. Yeah. So
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
conditioning.
I understand.
And we have ability to interact with conditions that
Right.
we encounter. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. What if so like we have like we're present and we understand like our feelings and our desires, like and they're truly ours.
Mhm.
But they're at clash with the conditions or the reality in front of us. Like what if our desire truly is to go and swim in the ocean, but we don't know how to swim? How do we like confront that?
Go learn how to swim. go learn how to swim.
Go learn how to swim.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you just change your conditions so then you can fulfill your desire?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So the thing is,
Yeah.
you have to look at your reality. These are the conditions that I have right now. One of the elements of my condition, I lack the skill to swim. That's part of the conditioning.
Yeah.
And now I have the desire. I would love to swim in the ocean. So that question should be asking, what are the conditions that I need to be put in place so that I see myself swimming?
Mm.
And then essentially, isn't that the whole thing of finding balance between being predetermined and free will?
Yeah.
Because then you can change
You
the
change
free
your
will
reality.
is to change your condition. So then the predetermined action will change because you change your conditions.
Yeah.
And there's the balance between the two.
She's a cap rising.
Beautiful. Cap rising?
Cap rising.
Of course.
Yeah.
She's my sign, rising. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for staying late with us. Thank you for your questions and your support. And I wanted to mention, sorry, we didn't send the email out yet for the upcoming retreat, but it's coming out. You are one, it's going to come. So don't freak out when you see an email, not announcing a home, but announcing a retreat. Okay. And we have other retreats that we are planning that we don't have exact dates of, right? So we're going to try to have as many of them as possible. Okay. Provided we have the conditions. Okay. So we're going to do a closing meditation. Since I'm in a good mood, I would like to be in a state of no action. Nizam, lead us to a closing meditation.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. So take a moment to find a posture and a position that's going to honor the ending of this time. And just bring your awareness and your attention into your body, into your physical experience as you begin to settle and allow the space to experience the ending of something. And just notice how your body, your being, your soul responds. And gently, gently, as you watch your physical muscles, your cells, your posture settle, you might notice your breath finding its own rhythm and pace. And sort of just allowing the whole conversation, the whole teaching, the beginning meditation to just all be here in this final moment and how it's changed you, how it's impacted you. You are somebody different than you were just an hour and a half ago when we started. And to this whole discussion, how is it that we can come together and have a conversation and be changed by it. And just sort of acknowledging all the people that are here in the room with you or online together as a group, as an entity. This shared experience. And just to really highlight and savor this moment, let's really acknowledge that this will never happen again, that this moment will never be repeated, and that we have all had the honor and privilege of experiencing it together. And maybe just taking 3, 4, 5 deeper, fuller inhales into that acknowledgement and into how you've been shifted or transformed or changed by this conversation, by these teachings, by the presence of these people. Letting your breath really fill your whole being, from your physical body to your emotional body, to your mental body, to your spiritual body. And then after those breaths, just letting your breath return and find its natural pace. An invitation just to thank yourself for being curious about this very complex and nuanced topic, and for giving yourself the opportunity to know yourself more and how you sort of find yourself amidst this conversation. And then just gently thanking everyone else for their presence, thanking Phuntsok for his teaching, his wisdom. And gently in your time, perhaps bringing some movements into your body, some stretches, some intuitive movements that feel good, and just noticing how your body is telling you to move here or there, and that feels nice or that doesn't feel nice. And noticing the sounds around you, wherever you are, the temperature in the room. Perhaps there's a breeze, perhaps there's a scent. Just sort of orienting yourself to your physical location for a moment. And ultimately, when it's right, when you're ready, letting your eyes open and just take a look around you. Notice the colors, the shapes, the shadows, the individuals. Thank you so much.